Hi everybody, thanks for coming to this webinar. What's new in Windows Server 2016, brought to you by SureWeb. I'm glad everybody had a chance to come in for this webinar. We'll get started right away. And basically the idea with this webinar is to make it as practical as possible. There's a million different places that have the information about what's new in Windows 2016. What we wanted to do is give you a chance to see some of those features in action. We selected a few things that we thought were relevant and, let's be honest, were easy enough to demonstrate. Let me introduce myself. I'm Guillaume Boisvert. I'm Director of Product Management at SureWeb for our Infrastructure as a Service offering, our Azure offering, and any Platform as a Service offering that we have. Today we'll be joined by a Principal Program Manager at Microsoft for Windows Server 2016, Nir Banzi. Nir, thanks for coming out today.
Thank you. Happy to be with you guys today.
So Nir knows Windows Server, not only Windows Server 2016, but Windows Server as a whole for a number of years now. And he has been working recently more on the security aspect, which is what he'll cover with us today. Talking of what we cover, or actually before I get into the content, let's just do a little bit of housekeeping. So this webinar is recorded. It will be, you will receive a link tomorrow, or let's say 48-hour tops. You will get a link to access the webinar and see it on the web if you have to leave during the presentation, or if you have had a chance to attend. Even if you did attend, you will see the link anyway. If you have questions, there is a box for QA directly built into our webinar software that we use. So don't hesitate, put in your question, whatever they are. Usually we keep the question to the end. We try to answer as many as possible. If we run out of time and can't answer your question, don't worry. We will contact you directly to give you the answer, give you a chance to talk about the subject that you requested. So we cover as many as possible live directly during the webinar, but if we run out of time, you'll get an answer anyway. Back to today's webinar. What are we going to be covering? So we'll spend just a minute on who is SureWeb. We have a lot of attendees today. Some of them are existing partners of SureWeb, some of them are not. We just want to make sure that we give you a little bit of context of why we're presenting today. After that, we'll talk quickly about the long list of new features that are in Windows Server 2016. Some very exciting stuff for system administrators, managed service providers, integrators. I think everybody will find something that they'll be looking forward to using in Windows Server 2016. After that, we'll talk a little bit about Windows Server 2016 at SureWeb, either in Performance Cloud or Azure, which we also offer. And then we'll get into the meats and potatoes, which will be the actual demonstration. The thing that we'll demonstrate, we'll talk about storage deduplication. We'll talk about storage replica. We'll talk about device guard within the security aspect. And I'll quickly show you the Windows containers. I'll talk about it a little bit later, but Windows containers, or containers in general, are all the rage, especially with developers and startups and things like that. I know they may not be directly usable tomorrow for managed service providers and small, medium businesses, but I thought it was interesting to at least show you that now it is included in Windows 2016, very easy to use. And then we'll try and save some time for the Q&A at the end. We have a lot of content today, so I don't know how much time we'll have left, but we'll try our best. Moving forward, we have a few questions. We like to get the audience to participate. Right now, I will go to my trusty assistant, Peter, who has the first question.
Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for coming out today in such big numbers. Before we tell you a little bit about ourselves, we wanted to just ask two quick poll questions to find out more about who's joining us today. So without further ado, let's get right into it. The first poll question, I'm just going to bring it up here. You should see it on your screen now. So which version of Windows Server are you currently using? I'll give you guys about 30 seconds to answer the questions. While we wait, Guillaume, the other day you were mentioning that there are still a lot of people using 2013, surprisingly, and you're saying that's rather interesting.
Well, two things. First, for the question itself, what we're asking is really for your work, either if you have clients that you manage or If you're a company using Windows Server, what's the main version that you're using? So I know most people are in different versions. So what would be the most common operating system that you're running now as far as Windows? And to your question, yes, I think Microsoft numbers say, maybe Nir can help me with that, but it's millions of installations of Windows Server 2003 that are still in active production today, which is troublesome because, well, and kudos to Microsoft for improving security with each and every version, but if you're running software from 2003, you're sort of exposing yourself to some pretty nasty stuff. I mean, there's no way it's completely up to date. Actually, and
Well, we do see a lot of customers moving off of 2003, either directly to the newest versions or to 2012 R2.
absolutely.
And that's mainly, we understand that there are major workloads that you just cannot move because you want to first make sure they're compatible, but whatever new servers or old servers that you can just upgrade, people are doing that in droves today.
Yeah, I think from our point of view, it's mostly a business opportunity for people that work in IT, where the reality of 2003 is still there, but I think everybody have accepted that they'll have to move off of it sooner rather than later. And with every refresh cycle, fewer people are on it. So let's see how our attendees today are doing as far as versions. That's interesting and very positive. I think so I guess they could answer multiple versions, right?
Right.
Okay, that's good. So a lot of 2008 still around. I think that's the next one to go. A lot of people have moved to 2012 R2, and I think that's very good. We can see that there's not a lot of reason to stick to 2012 because the upgrade path is very easy to 2012 R2. So a lot of people have made that jump already. And I'm impressed with the quantity of 2016. Those people are early adopters, clearly. That's good.
We see a lot of adoption on 2016 already. Yeah.
Yeah, I think with the feature set that we'll be exposing today, that's not all that surprising. From there, let's take a second about who is SureWeb. We're a cloud service provider. We've been a cloud service provider forever. We were a cloud before there was the expression cloud, so we started in 1998 as a hoster for shared for web hosting and for dedicated servers. But then we moved really into software as a service, platform as a service, and infrastructure as a service. We're a huge Microsoft partner for everything to do with Office 365. We can resell through partners. We have a huge channel. We have more than 5,000 partners worldwide. We have a staff of more than 250 now. I think we've actually cracked 300 this month. We have over 25,000 clients. We manage still over 300,000 mailboxes of hosted exchange. We're present in over 100 countries through partners and clients. And we were Microsoft Hosting Partner of the Year in 2013, and we were finalist again in 2014 and I believe 15, although it says 16 here. Well, one of the two. As you can see, we're also Veeam Gold Partners. We're technology like Deloitte Fast 50, Fast 500 for a number of years. So we have a lot of pedigree, let's say, with hosting. So, although there is a million features in 2016, we'll run through the major points. We won't dig into any of them because this webinar is supposed to last only 30, 40 minutes. But obviously, it might give you a hint of what's out there and things that you, if you have an interest in that particular field, can dig deeper. We'll also give you a few URLs where you can go and get that information. Hopefully, between this and the practical demos, you'll get a sense of what 2016 can do for you. So there's four major aspects of Windows Server. So security improvement, application platform, software-defined data center, and the management aspect. The first one that we'll be covering is security, and I'll pass it over to Nir because that is his specialty.
Okay, guys. So, it is not foreign to anyone that security is a major headline today across everything that we see in governments, organizations. I actually saw some very bad news lately about you know, ransomware folks hitting small businesses, asking for ransom, and sometimes not even being able to recover the data, so that it leads to the actual business going out of business due to everything lost. It's pretty amazing to see how this is becoming a disruptive, not only in in major organizations, but also in the smaller shops that rely completely on digital data today. So, of course, in Windows Server 16, one of our major pillars was around security. It was around how do we break the patterns that hackers use to take over your systems. And there are three main pillars there. One is around privileged identity. If you can protect your privileged identity, you can protect the hacker from being able to escalate in your environment, even if they were able to, through phishing, spear phishing, or some method, get into your environment. Server 16 helps you mitigate that escalation of privilege to get to domain admins and be able to then take over your environment and do bad things. The technologies there are both technologies that apply across your environment with just-in-time and just-enough administration that limit the amount of time that somebody is an admin, as well as limit what an admin can do with role-based administration using PowerShell. And also new technologies built into Server 16 to better protect the credentials of these administrators, so that if someone takes over the machine, they're unable to then take these credentials and use them to do malicious things. And this is known as pass the hash attack. So in Windows Server 16, we have protections that are called Credential Guard and Remote Credential Guard for a remote desktop, so that even if you use them, even if an administrator used the machine and then someone took over that machine through some malicious way, that attacker cannot take the credentials, that administrator credentials, and use them to do malicious things. So privileged identity, these are huge investments that we made in Server 16. The next part that we invested in Server 16 is how to make it more breach resistant and be able to be more active when someone attacks the server. So there's two aspects there. One is we want the server to be more resilient to attacks, but also we want it so that if the server is being attacked, it would send signals to systems that would be able to detect that something wrong is going on and an attack is going on. So some technologies to point out there, and I'm going to demo one of them later. One is Control Flow Guard, which blocks a set of attacks, I would say a family of attacks on memory-based attacks. It's just built into Server 16 Control Flow Guard. Next one is Defender is on by default and optimized for server roles. Defender is one of the, if you look at the results today of the various anti-malware evaluations, I think it's in the top 3. And it's just on by default. You don't need to do anything once you install Server 16. And last but not least, being able to understand what's going on in your system, what's running on your system, and then block unwanted software using Device Guard, which we'll see later on, is another major investment that we put into the system. The system itself, we added multiple auditing events so that when there is an attack going, the system would emit events so that monitoring systems can see these events. And you're able to both see what's going on as well as do forensic analysis afterwards. So privileged identity to protect your identity, breach resistance on the server itself to make it an active participant in your environment. And last, we made huge investments in secure virtualization. We are now in a SureWeb webinar, so of course SureWeb is using virtualization, and we wanted to make sure that hosters and data center administrators and fabric administrators can provide the VMs that are running with the assurance that even if the fabric gets compromised on the storage network or even on the host, the VMs are safe from that compromised fabric. And this is why we developed, we invested a lot in developing a major end-to-end solution that's called shielded VMs that allows you to both be compliant by encrypting the data in the VM, as well as protect the VM from a compromised fabric. And it's just like any normal VM, but it's protected from the in case of a compromised fabric. And that VM also has a virtual TPM so that you can use things like secure boot, BitLocker, and so on to protect the VM just like you protect any physical machine. And it will only run on trusted hosts so that if the host goes out of whack, out of baseline, somebody's trying to hack around with the host, the VM would not run on it. So protect the privileged identity to make sure that people cannot escalate within your environment. Make Server 16 an active participant in your security with breach resistance and better monitoring. And last but not least, secure virtualization, because everything is going to get virtualized. Secure virtualization so that whatever the VMs that you're running are protected from a compromised fabric.
Thank you, Nir. I think this is further proof that Microsoft has really embraced security, and what I like is it's really brought it into a way that most system administrators can make the most of it, and they can activate those features, and it doesn't become an all-consuming activity to just do the security. I think all those things really bring anybody's security matrix to a much higher level. All right. So we have a quick question about security. A quick poll, so I'm going to pass it over to Peter.
Yes, thank you, Guillaume. Thank you, Nir. The next question that we'd like to ask, and this is just directly in regards to what Nir just presented for security, which of Windows Server 2016's new security features do you find most important? I'll really try and respect the 30-second limit here. We want to move through this quickly, but Nir, you did a good job explaining these features. If you could just talk maybe 5 seconds about each one while we're receiving the answers.
Sure thing. So yeah, for shielded VM, it's really about protecting your virtual machines from a compromised fabric if you're running in your data center, as well as in the hoster environment, allowing the hoster also to make sure that they give you the assurance that their staff cannot access your VMs. And last but not least, it provides you with the compliance requirement to be encrypted at rest, encrypted on the wire for your workloads. A credential guard is all about preventing past the hash attacks, making sure that administrators' credentials are not compromised if someone compromised the machine they logged into. Just-in-time and just-enough administration is about limiting the amount of time and what an administrator can do, so that you can better control and monitor that. And last but not least, Device Guard allows you to make sure that what's running on your servers is really what you intended to run on your servers.
Okay, so if we look at the results, we can see that shielded VM, is a popular answer, as well as just-in-time and just-enough administration. I think, the level of access has been a battle that has had to see a lot of attention lately, which is old school references that everybody ran root, everybody ran administrator on their server, and that just doesn't cut it anymore. Okay, so moving on through the next sort of set of feature that is within Windows Server 2016. And I'm going to go a little bit quicker through these because, well, Nir basically built a lot of the security features, so he has a lot of input. On the other end, I'm more of a generalist. So in compute, software-defined data center is a big team right now in IT, and we can see why with the agility that is now necessary to run implementations and installations. Software-defined everything, basically, quote unquote, is becoming more and more the norm. And Microsoft wanted to make sure that Windows Server remained competitive in that domain and could become the building blocks to that software-defined reality. So for compute, a few examples of what has been added: rolling upgrades for no downtime. That's one thing that within SureWeb we'll use. You can upgrade host to 2016 and still have other hosts that are in 2012 R2 in your cluster and do that as a rolling upgrade. You can add, remove NICs and fixed memory, so network interface card. Sorry, my English failing today. More resilient network, storage, and compute PROM. So not as sensitive if something goes wrong. That is the idea with the cloud. That is the idea with infrastructure today, is that it's not that nothing is ever going to have a problem, is that the system is built with the idea that you will have problem in mind. It's built to fail is the expression that's really common. It will fail, but it will recover gracefully. User won't notice. It will still work great. Storage, hyperconverge with storage space direct. So storage space has been a big push of Microsoft recently. Now offering it with storage space direct, which means direct attached storage, and using it as an hyperconverged building block. Comparable to other providers, I think Nutanix has really jump-started that conversation, and a lot of people are seeing some of the advantage there. Inbox synchronous replication, cluster-wide quality of service. As far as storage, all those things are really to make things more resilient, make performance more predictable. As far as network, deploy apps faster with Azure inspired networking. So that means the new network controller that's in 2016, which includes virtual networks, load balancing, firewalling, and gateways. That's one thing that our clients, as far as our infrastructure, have been demanding, that we're looking to implement as soon as possible. Dynamically segment your network to manage evolving apps and security needs. Cost optimized predictable performance. I talked about that. And one more subject as far as software-defined data center is remote desktop services, or RDS. A very common use case among our partners that are doing infrastructure. So the things that are new in 2016 for that are support for heavy graphic workloads. So big improvement when it comes to OpenGL, OpenCL, remote effects as well, much improved. Enhanced deployment options, a lot of them including Azure, enhanced security. And I can tell you also scale has been worked on. So just a few more words, and I think actually seeing the time, I'm gonna skip over this. So better graphics, enhanced connection broker, and support for cloud managed domain services when it comes to RDS. And then you can see that as far as graphics, the device direct device assignment is now supported, as well as vGPUs. So we have a quick survey for that as well. This question is more of a general question. I think it's something that probably you've seen before. I'm going to pass it on to Peter.
Yes, so this one again, very quickly, we'd just like you to indicate what is your most common Windows Server deployment scenario. So this is with Windows Server 2016. We know this is the first server OS really conceived for the cloud. So there are obviously new options for that, but
so basically the idea is in a production sense, or if you have clients at your clients, what is the most common deployment scenario? Either on-premise physical servers, on-premise private cloud, hosted private cloud with a service provider, data center colocation, straight public cloud, so Azure, AWS, SureWeb, or more of an hybrid scenario where you have either basically the connection between two of those options. So maybe you have a private cloud on-premise, but you extend to a public cloud. Maybe you have a private cloud on-premise, but you also have a hosted private cloud that you connect together and share different workloads. This is just to give us a sense. So we can see that most people here are still using on-premise physical. It may come as a surprise to cloud evangelists and marketing people. I would say for most IT pros and system administrator, that is not a shock. That is what we're seeing as well with our clients. I would say hosted private as a second choice, and then the percentage of hybrid's a bit surprising. I think that number is probably the one that's going to grow more and more as people realize that there is a place for the cloud in just about every deployment. but not every deployment should be in the cloud. And you may be surprised to hear me say that as a cloud service provider, but that is just the truth. Very low presence of on-premise private cloud. That is interesting. Okay, thank you very much for answering that quick question. Another aspect of improvement and novelty in Windows Server 2016 is the application platform. One big thing is Nano Server. Basically, what the idea was to create the smallest possible version of Windows Server and put that in a deployment. What it means is smaller image size, meaning fewer things in it, reduced deployment time, reduced usage, reduced boot time. For people like us that are running large data center, that can mean a great deal of saving between just the capacity usage that we won't be using, but also the need to manage things that are really superfluous in a server OS. I'll give you my favorite example is Internet Explorer. If I'm running a service on a server, why would I need to, let's say, patch Internet Explorer, which is just, anyway. So that's one thing. Ideal for next generation app development, say, built for containers and cloud native apps. So containers within the Nano server make a ton of sense. Windows Server Container, basically, I'll talk about that just a little bit more in a few minutes. Bring the agility and density of containers to the Windows ecosystem, which is something that was missing so far. Secure containers are flexible, servicing with Hyper-V containers. So you can go high level with Windows container, or you can go lower level with Hyper-V containers. And they're both managed with Docker, which is best of breed. If you know containers, you know Docker's. Very reliable platform. Last but not least, management. So PowerShell. So PowerShell now has control over desired state configuration. Basically, this is a way to automate deployment and make sure that they're standard and fit the profile. If you're deploying a lot of servers, it's something that you should absolutely look into. PowerShell Direct is the ability to manage servers remotely. Actually, I'm not sure on that one. That looks bad. And then they've also improved server management tools, so rich web, graphical.
PowerShell Direct allows you to use PowerShell directly from the Hyper-V host into the VM.
Right. So yes. So to manage, let's say, quote unquote, remotely, not necessarily remotely as in distance, but remotely without being within the VM. Server management tools, rich web graphical interface, manage all server installation with it. So Nano, Core, or Full. And server can be on-premise or in the cloud, and you can use that management tool. That management tool is now in preview within Azure. So we just went through basically hours and hours of things that you could learn on. Next steps, really, you could consult Microsoft.com, Windows Server 2016. You could go to Channel 9, which is the learning channel for MSDN, or you could visit the blog on blog.technet.microsoft.com. All those things have many, many, many more hours of introduction and detailed technical explanation and everything on Windows Server. So moving on, SureWeb, I mentioned it, and I'll spend 2 seconds on this before moving forward, is we offer infrastructure as a service. We offer both our own infrastructure as a service, which is based on Hyper-V and System Center and the Windows Azure Pack. And we also offer the ability to purchase Azure through SureWeb. A lot of people ask us, why would I choose one over the other? And we have this little chart to sort of give a sense of that. When it comes to VM, virtual networks, VPN, database as a service, they both offer it. They're both great, no problem there. When it comes to Azure, there's the image marketplace, there's the full .NET platform as a service, the integration with Visual Studio. All those things are very unique to Azure, and they're great. If that's what you're looking for, no question, then you want Azure. HIPAA compliance would be through Azure. PCI compliance we offer and Azure offer. And then SureWeb really offer a full suite of hosting, which means we can do private cloud, we can do the hybrid clouds with physical servers, whatever you want, we can offer it. When it comes to redundancy, ours is built in. Azure offers it, absolutely, but through availability set. Same for SLA, so 99.95 for Azure within an availability set, and 5 nines directly with the Performance Cloud, even if you have a single VM. If you're looking for a data center in Singapore, then by all means, you really should consider Azure. It is not on our short-term roadmap. We offer Canada, with multiple data centers in Canada, and we offer the United States with multiple data centers in the United States. Azure is now up to 30. The last time I did this slide, there might be new because there's new regions all the time. Okay. So let's get to the practical aspects of Windows Server. So the first thing I'm going to show you is how to provision a Windows 2016 server within the SureWeb Performance Cloud. This is very simple, and that's the idea. Let me just get to that particular window. There you go. Hopefully everybody can see this. Yes. So I'm within my own account on the SureWeb Performance Cloud to create a new 2016 server. And I think the idea here, what we wanted to talk about is that, and I don't know if we want to chance the polls. No. Assistant says no more polls. Okay, so I'm going to just ask you directly. Maybe you can answer in the QA box. How many of you, either within your company or at your clients, have labs? So the ability to easily provision a new OS and give it a shot when it comes out. The reason that I asked, and our experience is very few small medium business have it. The reason that I ask is the cloud becomes just about the best place to do that. As I can show you right now while I talk, the ability to create a new virtual machines within just a few clicks is really a godsend to most administrators. I give the machine a name. I pick a OS template, in this case, obviously, Windows Server 2016 Data Center. I give it a password. Try not to mess that up. And that's it. So at SureWeb, creating a Windows 2016 server, that's it. That's the amount of effort that you have to put in. It's going to run for a few minutes, and then it's going to be created. The average creation time is about 5 minutes. 5 minutes within the webinar is forever, so we're going to move on and look at machine that I've already created for the purpose of these demos. So for example, this machine called Containers 1 is a 2-core, 4 gig of RAM, 440 gigs of storage virtual machine running 2016. It says on no right there, but that's 2016. If I wanted to change the configuration, well, that's the advantages of the cloud. Just take a couple of seconds to change drive or change CPU and RAM configuration. So moving right along, I'm going to get to my first demo, which is storage. Actually, these are reversed order. Storage deduplication. So storage deduplication is something that was already in Windows Server 2012. What has changed? And it is a offline block level deduplication per volume. So what that means is that there's a process that runs. If you set it up and you make it run, because it's not on by default. So if you set it up and you make it run, there's a process in the background that will look at the storage within the volume, and it will remove redundant block, or basically join redundant blocks. So if two blocks are the same, it will pull them as just one block and then point both files to that particular block. The gain in used space is very variable. It really depends on the workload. So let me pull up my Windows 2016 server. How's that? Actually, we can. All right, let's go with that. So this is running on the Performance Cloud. Set that up just yesterday. So what's new in 2016 for deduplication? Before I go any further, the ability to handle larger file, the ability to handle larger volumes. It really can handle pretty much every practical size now, and it just has better overall performance. There's only one caveat: is you can't use it on the system volume, which is fine. Probably not a good idea to do that there. So to set up deduplication, it couldn't be any easier. So let's say you go to your familiar server manager. I hope that everybody's familiar with this. I don't know if this is big enough. Yeah, it's plenty big. Okay. You simply add role. Go role base. For this particular server, you can install it for another server, obviously. In file and storage, within file again, there is data deduplication here. On the server, it's obviously already installed, but that's the extent of installing it. Not more complicated than that. Once you have that, you can simply go to your volumes and select a volume and select configure data deduplication here. And that will give you access to the option. There's a few different models, whether you're doing, it's a general purpose file server, it's VDI server, or it's virtualized backup server. It has different models for settings. You can customize any of those settings anyway. So deduplicated file ordered older than a certain amount of days. So what that means is that files that are very active, files that are being constantly worked on will not get deduplicated. What you want to do is your files that are a bit more quote unquote offline, you want to reduce the space that it's going to use as much as possible. You can ignore certain extensions, so not do certain files if you know that they either are non-repetitive in a certain way or are being edited all the time. And you can also edit the deduplication schedule. So usually you will enable background optimization, which means it will do deduplication in the background the whole time. But you can also, it will also give priority to everything else. So if your server is very busy, your optimization will not happen. You can then force a certain time where you want to have deduplication run more aggressively. So usually that'll be middle of the night, and then you run it for a certain time. That will give you a chance to sort of catch up if you let all it change. So that being said, I set up a file called dedupe. I'm not very original. And in it, I put two types of file. One that is really a best case extreme scenario for deduplication, and the other one is more normal. So in stuff, I have logs and basically their Windows Server installation files and different files from the system, which shouldn't be that good to deduplicate. And then in the other one, I had test file, which is basically just a 10 gig test file, and I put 2 copies of it. And honestly, each copy is just about an empty file. It's nothing. It's a repetition of nothing. So these are extremely positive case for deduplication. So if I go back here, we can see that on this particular setup, although I have about almost 30 gigs of data, I'm really using 6. And that means that deduplication is saving me 81% disk usage for a saving of about 25 gigs. One thing here, and if the light bulb hasn't gone off already in your head, let me help you. This is a way to pay a company like SureWeb a lot less money. So if you can deduplicate your file, you're using less space. And we all know the cloud, it's a pay-as-you-go model. So if you can use less space, you pay less money to your service provider. Not necessarily the best thing for me as far as financial, but really what I want is for my partners and my clients to be as happy as possible. So this is a use case that you've seen. It took me 2 seconds to show you how to configure it, and you just put file into it and it will do its thing. This is a bit of a no-brainer that I think everybody should have a look at and a certain interest for it. So that's it for deduplication. Let's talk about replication a little bit. There's a few scenarios for storage replica. You can do it at different level. You can do it at the hypervisor level. You can do it at the file or at the server level, which is what I set up here. Basically, what I set up is server to server. So you need to have 2 servers within the same domain for us. And then they need to be able to talk to each other, which should be the case if we're talking about they're in the same domain. Once you have that, you can set up either a synchronous replication or asynchronous. If you're on a local network, you can do synchronous. If you're going over the wire, over the internet, WAN, depending what it is, I probably would recommend asynchronous. So requirements, supports 2 disks. So on each server, you would have to create 2 partition. One is the one that you want to replicate, and another one for logs. Logs are kept to know the changes and make sure that both are kept in sync and both are functional. The log, I think the recommendation is at least 10 gigs. In this particular case, you can see I created the source, and then I created the logs. And on my second computer, I did the exact same. So to show you, this is computer 1. That's why I have 1 in the background so I don't get confused. And this is computer 2, which I will now log into quickly. So on computer 2, I have the exact same 2 drives. I have replication destination and I have replica log. So going back here, let me show you how I set up replication. So this is the whole thing. This is the whole thing to create replication between two servers. One question is, and this is not a poll, is how many people are familiar with PowerShell? I think more and more people that are in the Windows ecosystem are now familiar and even work daily with PowerShell. If you don't, this would be probably the biggest takeaway from this presentation is work on your PowerShell. It's going to be, if you want to keep managing Windows Server, it's going to be a skill that becomes ubiquitous. You have to have it. Some of the features are not going to be exposed directly by the graphical interface. If we're talking about core or nano version of Windows Server, it's going to be all PowerShell. I think it's a tool you have to have in your tool set. This is a very, very simple example, but this is PowerShell script. So basically create a new storage replication partnership. Basically give the source information and then the destination information. And you don't have to run this on both computers. They just have to be able to talk to each other. There is another command called test storage replication partnership that allows you to see if everything is working correctly. So I ran this and it created the bond between those two servers. When it did, it unmounted the drive on the second server. So now if I go to my file explorer, and I'll pick some files to copy, let's say something small like this directory. My source, actually I'm going to use a different file because I already copied that one. So let's take a few of those directories. These. Obviously, it's not a scientific thing, so just a random set is fine. So I'm going to put that in my source. As I do that, they will go over the wire to the second server in the replication pair. This should go fairly quickly because I have 10 gigabit or so of bandwidth between the two servers running in our SureWeb Performance Cloud. So since this is...
I want to jump in and say two things here. One is, today you pay, this is synchronous block replication, so today you pay big bucks to get this for any of your DR environments. This is just built into Server 16. The second is, it doesn't matter what hypervisor Server 16 is running on. You could run one VM in SureWeb, another VM in Azure or in AWS or on your VMware, and the replication will just work. It's not dependent on any of the hypervisor features.
Right. The way I'm demonstrating it today is really server level, which you're exactly right. This is and we see this with Microsoft product all the time, is you're adding more and more and more features that were once considered like very expensive and very hard to set up, and you're making them accessible and including them in the price of the server software. So the files should have been copied over. So if I break the relationship here, which is this simple script here, we'll be able to see if the file were copied over to the second server. You can see that I've chosen a very descriptive background, so it's asking me if I'm sure that I want to break that relationship. I am positive. So once that's done, my drive that was no longer accessible because it was a replica now become accessible, and it contains a new file that I just copied from the other side, which means that if I had a problem on the other side and I need to flip to this new, to the destination side, it would be in sync and contain all the same files that I had on my other drive. So this is a very simple way to demonstrate storage replica, but it gives you an idea and can start to give you some ideas for scenarios. One thing that you could do is, if you have an hybrid client which has some of their servers, some of their files on premise, and they have a Performance Cloud account, you could easily set up that replication and keep things synchronized. And even if they have a mediocre or average internet connection, you can use the asynchronous mode and still get that done. So, going back to Nir to give us a bit of a practical demonstration of device guard code integrity. So let me just pass it on over to him. Here you go. So Nir, you should be able to share your screen now.
Cool. Let me know if you can see my screen.
We can see your screen.
Excellent. Let's see if I can hide the control panel. Oh, nice. All right, so device guard is actually a feature that I really like for servers. It's kind of like the diamond in the rough for me for servers. First of all, it just works on any server 16, again, regardless of the hypervisor, which is pretty cool because you can use it across your environment. Now, if you think about what's running in your environment, what's running on your servers, if you're like many others, you probably have no idea what's running on your servers. And servers in particular are a major attack vector for hackers and attackers to come in and run malicious code on these servers so that they can do very bad things. So device guard is an evolution of AppLocker that allows you to monitor not only applications that are running, but also system modules as well as system drivers. So now I can actually go ahead and limit what can run on my servers so that I can make sure that only code that's allowed can run on my servers. And if you think about it, if you wanted to go and deploy this kind of a solution on your environment, you would probably not want to just go and deploy it and see what breaks, right? So the first thing you can do with the device guard and the part that I'm really concentrating on here is called code integrity, is you want to be able to see what's running in your environment. Let's say that in my environment, I know that I'm running binaries from Microsoft, from NVIDIA, from Intel, and my own binaries that I signed, and so on. And I can create a policy that says I'd like to make sure that only these publishers can run binaries in my environment. And the way I do it, I take a baseline server, I scan it for all the publishers, and I create that policy automatically. And then I can actually put this policy into audit mode. So, for example, we have here, a server that has the code integrity policy running in audit mode, and I can run a binary called do not run me. Now, people won't run a binary called do not run me, but they would run other binaries that look innocuous. And when I run it, it's going to run because it's in audit mode. However, there is an audit event that will show me, and let me know if can you see my screen now in highlighted?
Yeah, we can see the zoomed in version.
Excellent. So you see that I have an event saying do not run me was run. It shouldn't have run because it doesn't it's not part of my code integrity policy. And yeah, I am now able to monitor what's running on all my servers, and I'm able to see what's running that should not run there, that's not supposed to run there, and I can go ahead and either add that to the policy if it's something that I know should run, or I can go ahead and remove these binaries from the server so that they don't run. Now, I did it on one server, and of course, you're asking yourself, okay, if I have 1,000 servers or 10,000 servers, what do I do? And that's where the integration with the Microsoft Operation Management Suite comes in. You can actually aggregate all these events into the Microsoft Operation Management Suite, and then you can see, I have here the event that we just saw. I can just see it up on the, in the Operations Management Suite, and now I can see how many servers ran this do not run me.exe, how many instances of this ran, on a specific server, what's going on. I can have all kind of correlations between what's running in my systems and what my servers are reporting to me, so that I can have a view of things that are not signed, that are running, that shouldn't run, and then I can go ahead and deal with them in a central way and not on a per server way. Now, once I did that, I can go back and configure the policy to run in enforcement mode. So this server has the same policy, but now I turn it into enforcement mode. When you run do not run me, it would say, I'm sorry, you can't run do not run me if it was not obvious by the name. And the reason is that, device guard is blocking this app. So I can create a policy, either in audit mode or enforcement mode, and I can put it into my group policy so that it gets applied to all my servers. And using that policy, I can both monitor what's running on my servers so that I can clean it up, as well as I can go ahead and block it from running on servers where it shouldn't run. And if you think about your environment, you would probably run your audit mode on general purpose servers, but you would really want to run enforcement mode on your high value servers so that people don't run just any binary on these servers that might cause your business to go down. And last but not least, code integrity has the capability to even block administrators from running malicious software, so that you can actually make sure that not only software cannot run, but also administrators cannot change the policy unless it's done by an authorized administrator. So you have all these great capabilities of now making sure both monitoring what's running on your server, as well as making sure that only non-malicious code is running, so that then you can make the server more breach resistant, regardless of the hypervisor that it's running on.
Great.
And back to you.
Yeah. So I think we had a couple of questions about that, but that looks very, very interesting. I think malicious software is a well-known problem, and the ability to sort of whitelist and make sure that only the stuff that you're expecting is running is a big deal. So yeah. We're sort of running short on time. I had planned to show you. Oh, actually, yes, this is interesting information. We won't go into detail of it, but so Device Guard, as well as the other new security features, are Microsoft did the work of mapping those new feature and what they can do to different controls for compliance. So we can see here a chart that shows Device Guard specifically, how it relates to ISO 27001 controls, PCI DSS for credit card control, FedRAMP as well. Obviously, those charts are available for the different other features of security that we talked about. But really, I think Microsoft target is to give you as simple of a path toward compliance while using its product, correct?
Yeah, exactly. And all of these are published, available online to everyone.
Right. So being a company that went through PCI and that went through ISO, I could tell you that these kinds of information are very, very useful to try to make the process a little bit simpler. So Windows container, what time is it? Ooh. Well, all right. I'm going to respect the schedule of our viewers and just show you sort of the end. Skip to the end, as they say. Skip to the chase is what they say, really. So installing containers on Windows Server 2016 is really these two lines of PowerShell. Obviously, I've already done it on this computer, and here's the world's simplest sample. Is basically it will start a Windows core container and show this beautiful ASCII art. For the people that are my age, probably very familiar with ASCII art. I don't know if the current generation is as well. Anyway, moving on. So Windows containers are something that probably should look at if you have a lot of development or if you're building modern microservices. Next step for everybody, for people that want to, hopefully we've convinced you to get interested into SureWeb and have a look and see it as a good test bed for Windows Server. For people that want to resell our services, people that want to partner with us, contact our either your account representative if you already have a partner, or contact partners@sureweb.com or the phone number that's here. For end users, you can contact sales@sureweb directly. We have plenty of end user directly client with us. Phone number is there as well. as soon as you're a client, it's really 5 minutes to being able to provision Windows Server 2016. So if the people that you saw some things today in the demonstration or in the list of things, you want to try your own scenario, you could be provisioning Windows Server in 10 minutes, really, within the SureWeb Performance Cloud. So let's take just a quick minute for question. One of them was for Nir. You showed what happens when something is an audit, something is blacklisted. What are sort of the options to build that list of accessible or non-accessible software? So as we know, a Windows Server has 100 different software that are running at any time. Do I really have to figure out the full path for all those software and list them all, or how can I sort of build that list easily?
That's a great question. We actually have a PowerShell command that it builds for you based, you put it on a baseline server that has the software that you require, or either your current server that you believe is pristine, and then you run it and it builds up the policy for you.
Okay, well that's great. That's probably the easiest way, because otherwise it'd be fairly tricky to construct. Another question is, what is the cost of running 2016 within the Performance Cloud? So the cost is really just the infrastructure cost. So there's a CPU per hour, RAM per hour, like any other infrastructure as a service. The OS itself doesn't cost you anything. We include the price of the OS and everything. You don't have to pay extra. Maybe people noticed when I created my Performance Cloud server with Windows Server 2016 Data Center. Data Center is the only edition that we offer because it doesn't add anything to your price. Basically, we give you the big bad version at no extra charge. Sadly, that's all the time we have today. Like I mentioned before, anybody that asked the question we haven't gotten around to will contact you directly with the answer. If somebody is looking for, like I mentioned, presentation is going to be sent. You'll be able to watch the recording at your convenience. Thanks everybody for coming out, and hopefully we'll see you at our next SureWeb webinar. I want to thank Nir for his time and his great expertise of Windows Server. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.